am so excited for today's guest on CMO School. We have Mindi Huebner. Mindi works with high achieving women to help rewire their subconscious, shift their identity, and remove the hidden blocks that are keeping them stuck from living the life of their dreams and growing the business of their dreams. So, some of the things we talked about in today's episode are why strategy alone won't work if your subconscious is not on board, how to spot the subconscious stories or limiting beliefs and identities that are running your life and your business, common conditioning patterns like rest is lazy or my worth equals my output. So that proving, pushing, overworking, how those things are showing up and how they're driving you, and then how you can release them. We talked about some small steps and bigger steps that you can take today to start shifting some of these beliefs and patterns that are kind of running the show sometimes. And this work has been so transformative for me as a human, as a person, as a business owner, a mom, a friend. So I could have talked to Mindi for hours, and I am just so passionate about the work she's doing. I'm so excited to share it with you. So let's dive in. Welcome, Mindi. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me here, Jess. We've been circling each other for a while now, so I'm excited the date finally came.
I know, me too. We just recently met was it June at the event when you were here? Yeah. And I know when we had our coffee chat and I was talking to you about what you did, I don't even know how much we were over time. And I remember just saying I could talk to you about this for hours. So I'm so excited to
Yeah.
chat with you today. And before we jump into your intro, you do so much mindset work, subconscious work. And the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast is because I have built my business to be better than my wildest dreams. And I really, really attribute so much of that, actually, probably all of that, to the mindset work that I've done and the work that I've done on myself as a person to be able to step into leadership and become, a more true version of myself and be able to hold the success that I've achieved through my company. So I'm so excited. I believe so much in the work that you do, and I just can't wait to dive in. So before we do, can you just give us a quick little intro on who you are and the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Mindi Huebner. I'm a subconscious success alchemist. The work I do, mindset, identity work, identity is our repeated way of beingness. And so we go really deep into the root of the patterns that habitually show up for us, being who we are. And then mindset is our relationship with something. And so we also then our relationship with time, our relationship with money, our relationship with capacity, as you talked about, being able to hold the success, step into leadership. And while they're not the same, they're kissing cousins. Like they're one that doesn't come far from the other one. I can remember since about 2015, maybe 2014, I got an email that said my sales division was closing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not that upset about it. What does this mean that I'm not that upset that I'm out of a job, right? And what I realized was not only was it an opportunity, but the email reminded me that I had spent years devoted, late nights in leadership, hustling, grinding, and I had a successful business. And I'm going to use a word here, but when we get deeper in, we'll talk about the difference between but and. I had all those things, but I was exhausted, but I believed that rest was lazy. And it was that moment, believing that rest was lazy, building something very successful, traveling, training nationally for my company, all the things that wasn't sustainable. Even though I had been sustaining it for years, it was at a cost. And so when that crossroads came, when I got that email, while I had coached, taught, mentored my entire adult life up until then, now I get to do the inner work.
Yeah.
Now I get to get underneath this belief that rest is lazy, this belief that if I am not constantly achieving, I'm not worthy. I'm not proving myself over and over again. And that's how I got to where I am today in the work that I do. When the doors closed on my division and I was at that crossroads, I dove into habits and all kinds of neuro work and subconscious identity and the pieces that were available. I took NLP training and I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and Reiki and all the things to be able to have this huge toolbox, number one, to serve myself. And then number two, to be able to serve clients and meet them where they're at.
I love that. And what do you think inspired you to do that? Because I think that so many of us either are or were in that place where you're kind of in this subconscious way of living and you don't really realize what's driving you. I certainly resonate with that. I remember working at Lululemon. And it was just the culture there to hustle, like hustle. And there were two people in particular that I can remember that were very boundaried. They would come at 9, they would leave at 5, they would take their lunch breaks, they would go to the free yoga classes provided and go enjoy yoga, like do all these things. And I would look at them with so much judgment. I'd be like, oh, they're lazy. They're not driven. They don't want to succeed. And it's so funny looking back now. I can see now, A, I've changed so much. I don't believe that whatsoever now. But B, I can see that I was driven so subconsciously by my worth comes from my output. And so I looked at that and was super triggered by them taking rest because deep, deep
Yeah.
down, really what I wanted, really what I wanted, but would not give myself permission for that. So I'm so curious what inspired you to actually recognize that in yourself and start to learn your subconscious patterns and start to understand that world because I feel like for everyone who does this, there's usually a catalyst moment or something that kind of tipped them over the edge into this new way of thinking.
Yes. Well, it was the combination of the doors closing and the relief at not having that business anymore. That was very, okay, wait a minute. This is how you've lived and made lots of money and done all the things. Why aren't you more upset about this? Which
Mm,
was the first epiphany. Like, this
like,
is an
wait a minute.
opportunity to build something better,
Okay.
something different. I don't have to show up the way that I did. And
Yeah.
I call that conditioning, right? We're all conditioned. I help high achieving women, women founders, CEOs shed the conditioning that says my output equals my value, the
Yeah.
conditioning that says people that rest are lazy, all of that conditioning that has been put on us. Once we shed that, we are then able to come and lead from self trust and from this really aligned and authentic place of the real us, not with someone else's meanings and decisions on top of that, someone else's version of success. We actually get to our own version of success. And that was also a transformation in itself because the very first coaching certification that I got was health coaching. And I thought, first of all, it speaks to me. And now I can have this structure to make a difference for someone. And I was like, yeah, this is great. I'm going to get life coaching. And I moved into life coaching and through both those iterations, I was like, oh, actually what's happening is right here. Everything, every block, every bottleneck, the roadblocks were happening because of what was going on in the 5 inches between our ears. So whether that was our subconscious identity or our mindset, that's what was stopping the results from happening in the way that people wanted them to happen. And the moment that I also recognized that, I was like, well, I'm just going to cut all this out and go right to the root and just work in identity. Now, do I still health coach? Yes, because I coach women founders. So they have health concerns, health goals, right? Do I still life coach? Heck yes. I coach the woman who runs the business, right? So those things still happen. I still take all those tools and our focus is what do we want to get out of the way? Like what's blocking us or what do we want to expand on? What's a way that we're showing up and being a leader that we want to grow? We want to evolve. We
Yeah.
want to have more of that.
Yeah. I love that so much. And I've been doing this work now for 4 years probably, but I can kind of rewind back to myself when all of this stuff was new to me. And I actually kind of fell into all of this work through an online boot camp that I signed up for. And there was a hypnosis session. And I remember just kind of joking to my husband, like, okay, I'm going to go get hypnotized. And yeah, the experience with that is wild. I'll share that on another episode on my podcast. But it was really my entry point into all of this of like, whoa, what is going on subconsciously for me? And holy shit, which version of me has been driving my life and making decisions for me? And for anyone who's new to this work, can we talk a little bit about where do these beliefs come from? Like when we say subconscious, when we say like our mindset, where and how are those developed? And what are we meaning when we say that? Because I had no idea. I was like, what is everybody talking about? None of this makes sense to me.
Well, there's a couple things that happen. And I too had a really amazing hypnosis experience the first time that I was hypnotized. And it was when I was getting my NLP and clinical hypnotherapy training. And I was actually hypnotized to love small talk because I hated small talk. And that's sort of a block when you're networking and everything else, right? And immediately following the hypnosis, like 2 days later, I was at the airport to get on a plane and could not stop myself from talking to everyone. It was wild how it had unlocked this version of me who was willing to engage in small talk to be able to go deeper. So, highly recommend hypnosis. The body is a robot for the mind, and you won't do anything against your ecology. Like, it's not mind control or anything like that. It will allow you to uproot the systems and beliefs and conditioning that aren't serving you so that you can show up like you want to. So, where do those things come from? They come from all over. They come from our families. They come from where we grew up, how we grew up. They come from society. They come from just the meaning that we give to things as well. I'm going to invite you to think about how quickly you give a meaning to something and then never revisit it again. So you're driving along and someone cuts you off. Now, most of the time, most of us think, oh, what a jerk, right? Like this person like honk or flip them off or whatever, right? Oh, this person's such a jerk. They cut me off. This is the split second meaning we give to it. And we very rarely revisit that. The truth is, that person cutting us off has many meanings. We chose a really disempowered meaning. We get to choose a more empowered meaning. Maybe they're sidetracked because of XYZ. And ultimately, I've probably cut someone off before and I'm not a jerk. And when we reframe it to something that empowers us versus disempowers us, this is where we start to see I gave meaning to that and never revisited it. So there's fact and there's meaning that we've
Yeah.
given to things without thinking about it. And conditioning can come from there. Conditioning can come from people who have spoken over you. I had a client who was told her whole very young life that she was shy, right? Oh, she's shy, she's shy, she's shy. She wasn't shy. She was just really thoughtful and just didn't always want to speak. It had nothing to do with being shy, yet that was something that she had to shed when
Yeah.
she then wanted to do business and wanted to become, right? Like visible and those types of things.
Yeah.
Because all she could hear was what people spoke over her whole young life. And all of those things like that 0 to 7 years, extremely formative in what we're saying. And so being able to think about things like that. Now, here for some of you, it doesn't matter where the conditioning came from. I'm going to let you off the hook because we're not doing therapy. So we might never get to the why. What I will tell you is the way that your brain works, you're so powerful that you're always winning the game that you're playing. So your brain is deleting, distorting, and generalizing based on your beliefs. When you recognize that, like, oh, look at that. I believe that rest is lazy. Therefore, right? Your brain was deleting, distorting, and generalizing, making you judge the people who were resting. And it was the same
Yeah.
for me, right?
Yeah.
It was the same for me, like so lazy, but I would also judge myself. Just a day on the couch was like, oh, you lazy bum kind of thing,
Total.
which is absurd, right?
Yeah.
When we know now that was absurd. The other filter that's happening in your brain is your RAS, your reticular activating system. So this, in very basic terms, brings you what you anticipate and expect. And so if you're anticipating and expecting that rest is lazy or that hustle is the only way to get ahead or that people who cut you off in traffic are jerks, you win. Like it will bring you proof of that. It always wants to prove you right. Your subconscious is not designed for you to be successful. It's designed for your survival. So it is going to kick in habits that keep you in the familiar and in the known, even if they don't serve you. Even if we talk love, safety, and belonging, even if you don't love it, even if it doesn't feel quote unquote safe, even if you don't want to belong to that club anymore, it will keep you in the familiar until you've made enough choices that this familiar isn't where I want to be.
Yeah. So how do we go about identifying some of those? Because I know for me, certainly when I look back at that version of me, however many years ago, I really thought that's what I believed. And even when I started to build my business, it really was coming from that place. And it was something that A, had to like identify first within me. And then
Mhm.
B, it took a lot of time for me to like unwind and like rewire that belief and kind of deconstruct that. What is this attached to and why and all of these things. And yeah, I'm just curious if someone was sitting there thinking like either, oh, I don't have those, or like, what are mine? How do we go about getting curious and
Yeah.
uncovering some of those?
Great question. So when I tell you that you're always winning the game that you're playing and that you're so powerful, you think a thought over and over again, it becomes a belief, it becomes an I am statement. It then creates body sensations, emotions, and then you create a habit to prove it to yourself. So I'm just going to invite you to look at your habits and ask yourself which habits actually serve you and which ones don't, which ones are empowering and which ones aren't. If you are in the habit of saying, I'm a hot mess, you win. And you're so powerful that you are actually creating habits to prove that to yourself. Your brain is deleting, distorting, and generalizing based on the fact that you believe you're a hot mess, even if it's a joke, right? Hot mess express. The more we say it, the more that's what our filter is bringing us. We're anticipating and expecting. So I'm inviting you to everyone to think about where you say something disempowering about yourself and what that brings you. So if you're a bad time manager, or I'm terrible with money, or I'm a people pleaser, or any of those things, there's no shame in this. This is the first step, and it's awareness. When we think about how to create safety in our subconscious identity, safety to become that next version of us, to shed the conditioning, to really, the truth is, come home to us, the truest version of us. The first piece is awareness. And that's it. We get to be aware of who we're being, internally, what we say we want, and externally, how we're showing up. And
Mhm.
that's some massive work right there. Is just
Yeah.
the awareness. Asking yourself, like, who am I being? Who do I want to be?
Yeah.
Like, do I want to be a hot mess? Do I want to be a bad time manager? Do I want to be someone that's bad with money? When you think about these practices as well, I wasn't going to go here, but I feel like this is an important sort of take. We self-protect, AKA self-sabotage all the time. Like this is something that happens. And so thinking about the root of self-sabotage, the root of self-protection is fear. And it's fear of, maybe it's success, maybe it's failure, maybe it's visibility, maybe it's people will see the real you, maybe it's fear that you'll have to give something up in order to get to this next thing. Excuse me. And you've decided that giving this up is a bad thing, as opposed to, right, like making space for the next thing. And the sort of the mother of that is critical self-talk. And the
Mhm.
critical self-talk gives birth to the rest of the habits that show up as self-protection, aka self-sabotage.
Yeah.
So what you're saying to yourself and what you're believing about yourself is vital.
Mhm.
And you just get to do an audit
Yeah.
and start getting curious about it, and you're gonna have some massive awareness. If you're telling yourself you don't have any limiting beliefs or disempowered habits, you're lying.
You do. We all do.
You're
I love
lying.
that. And I feel like all of that rings true. And I think for me, another thing that has and still helps me, like it's not like they're all gone,
Yeah.
but when I have been thinking about limiting beliefs, for me, it would sometimes show up in the form of seeing something or someone and almost this feeling of jealousy or I wish I was that way. And I think I never questioned that before. I remember starting this business 4.5 years ago and being like, I'm not the kind of person that talks on camera. That's not me. And as I started to get into this work, questioning that, well, why
Yeah.
not me?
Who
If I
says,
want to, where is this coming from? Why do I think this about myself? What makes me different than so and so with like $1 million podcast or whatever, million listeners on their podcast? Literally nothing. They just went and did it and believed in themselves. And so for me, that has always been another good indicator of, am I looking around or is there something in my life I want to do that I'm telling myself I can't do? And I
yeah,
remember seeing a quote somewhere that's always stuck with me. It's something along the lines of the difference between who we are and like where we want to be. So I'm gonna mess it up, but essentially like the only like difference between that is like how you see yourself. And
it's
so
the
that yeah,
identity gap.
been like a really good identifier for me. If I'm wanting something and feeling like it's not possible, like why? Like what's underneath all of that? Even if it's like
That,
I want to rest or I look at that person who has like a quote unquote freedom based business and like I wish I could work less. Well, wait a minute, why can't I? And
yes,
just
yes.
getting really curious with myself and like digging into like, well, what do I believe I have to do? And why do I believe I have to do that? Or that I'm not this way or I am this way, or, just getting really curious with like where those beliefs are coming from.
And that's the identity gap. Who we are to where we want to be is the gap in our identity. So, one of the things that we get to do, and you have done this work for a long time now, for people who are newer to this work, I'm going to invite them to quit asking why when it's not in the direction of their hopes, dreams, schemes, and everything that they want, because we are conditioned and trained to, when we ask why, say because and come up with a reason or an excuse. So why can't I be the person that goes on camera? Well, my smile's funny or blah, blah, blah. We will tell a story.
Yeah.
You have children. When you ask them why they did something, they will say because and tell a story, right?
Oh, yeah. There's always a reason.
Yes, and there's nothing inherently wrong with telling the story. The story is rehearsed. And so if we want a different answer, we get to ask a better question. So instead, what makes me think, say, believe that I can't have that? When did I decide that? How am I stopping myself? Just shifting the question a little bit gets you out of the because mode. And that's huge for people
Yeah.
because
Yeah. I
we're
love
just
that.
so trained to say because. Why? Because
Yeah. It's easy because your brain has spent so much time like
those
building the case for
pathways.
you and like
Yes. Yes.
collecting all the evidence and being like, well, I will tell you why. Like this and this. Here's all the
Exactly.
reasons why you have to do
Ex-
this or you can't be this way. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And the beauty of this type of work is, as well, we never get it done. So while we get past the first, well, what makes me think I can't be on camera? And now here you are, gorgeous on camera. So I have a client and she is extremely successful and runs a highly profitable business. And she wanted to do $1 million in revenue. And she had decided that in order to do $1 million in revenue in a year, she would have to give up too many things. She would have to give up her time and her freedom. She very much covets her schedule. She doesn't work over 22 hours a week, 25 max, tries to stay at the 20 mark. And she didn't want to be like the other 7-figure entrepreneurs because they didn't feel authentic to her. They didn't seem real. They didn't seem like regular people with regular problems. So she decided that she couldn't hit $1 million because of those reasons. We had one session. So here we are at that new level where those new limiting beliefs come up. We had one session, 15 minutes, to unwire the lie that she would have to give up. That's what, remember, fear. Fear is at the
Uh-huh.
root of all of that. The fear that she would have to not only give up her schedule and what she had created in that way, but also give up herself, give up her realness, her authenticity in order to be that. Because she had just given meaning to $1 million means you look like that, you do that, you work like that. We dismantled that. Who says? Who says you have to work
Yeah.
like that? What if we
Yeah.
created a plan to not work like that, to work like you? in your capacity, because you talked about capacity before, right? Your version of success within 3 months, she hit $1 million
That's amazing. I
because she
love
had the
that.
plan. She already
Yeah.
was the woman who she had this roadblock, this limit in the way. She had been asking herself why, but I didn't ask her why. I said, what makes you believe that? So she could say, well, this makes me believe it, and this makes me believe it, and this person, I don't want to be that person. No shade to that person. That's
Yeah.
not her person, right? That was huge. So those are the types of things that come in with the work like this and how quickly you can move as well. While
Yeah.
I said you never get it done, you also are like quantum leaping when you are
Yes.
doing the work as well.
Yeah. 100%. And I have two things. Before I ask you this question, I also want to say one thing I've learned about this work, and I'm sure you see this too, just to kind of piggyback off of You're Never Done. I have noticed that these parts of us that are trying to keep us safe or prove out something, they end up finding a new way to pop up. And I think when I first got into this work, I was coming from the perspective of, okay, I have all these things I want to fix. I want to fix myself and just have these things be gone and done. And they're just not in my life anymore. They're not going to drive me. Let's tuck them into a box, put them away. We're done with those. And like, I'm fixed. Great. Awesome. Let's do this. And the more I've done the work, I've realized it's not about fixing myself. It's about recognizing those pieces of me and thanking them for keeping me safe and playing the role that they played, because usually they came out of some sort of survival mechanism, but
Hmm.
saying, okay, like I don't need this anymore and I'm going to give you a new role. So really like not rejecting parts of ourselves, because that can actually create like other challenges and wounds, but really kind of like appreciating and valuing, but giving that piece of you another job and saying, okay, now this is how we do things. Thank you.
Beautiful.
And you're over here. It's been funny to me how those pieces, it hasn't just been this really clean box of like, okay, here's your new role. And I find those pieces of me aren't obedient, I will say. They're not like, okay, I'm going to go do this. There's still parts of that patterning that sometimes likes to come back in different ways. And I have found it to be surprising sometimes where something will change in my business and I'm like, oh, great, that limiting belief is now gone and whatnot. But then I'll see it crop up over here in like my marriage or how I parent. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know what's happening here. This is actually that, like disguised as something else. And yeah, that's just been so interesting to me, is the whole perspective of it's not linear and you're not fixing yourself and you're not done.
Right. Exactly. One, you're not broken, right?
Yeah.
So there's no fixing to do. There's conditioning to shed. There's releasing to be done. There's honoring to be done. And what you were speaking to, I like to talk about every identity is a role with a goal. Every identity is a role with a goal, whether it's a protection goal, whether what it is. And what usually blows people's minds is when you are, and let's use an emotional identity, when you're angry, the goal is not to be happy. The goal is to actually be angry and feel those emotions and yell or do whatever. The work comes in you choosing the identity and choosing the role over it choosing you.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when we integrate that in, because anger is not bad, that's not a bad thing. Number one, it's an emotion that shows us we're human. Number two, it absolutely has its place. We don't want to banish angry us forever. What we do want is to be able to go tap into that identity when it's needed. We get to make the informed, conscious choice to say, I mean, a little of that. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that we get to consider that as well when we're thinking about integrating all the roles, integrating the identities in, because what else can happen is conflicting identities. And so those are usually absolute opposites of each other. And so I know for me, some conflicting identities that have shown up in the past was the hustler versus the rester, right?
Mm.
Like, talk about fighting. until I realized there's a time for aligned hustle. We have those seasons. It's not at my health's expense though. And it's
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
marathon. I might be sprinting a hustle, right? But I'm not marathoning a hustle. That doesn't serve me or work for me. And if I rest all the time and I never work, well, things just aren't falling in my lap either. And so it was integrating those together to say, I get to rest and I get to choose some aligned hustle when it's vital to getting me where I want to go. And
Yeah.
that's the other part of the work that comes in, the awareness of who we are being and who we want to be. When we can name it, when we take ownership, I'm so habitually used to being the hustler. That
Yeah.
doesn't make me bad or anything, right? I get to just notice that this is an old role trying to run the new show.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think for me, just paying attention to how I feel day to day has been so helpful for that too. And what thoughts are coming up for me. So if I am in a hustle phase, I feel like I have those two identities too and have had to really work at the integration of it has not been easy, but really just paying attention to how am I feeling? I have some days, like actually yesterday was a really good example. I had an appointment in the morning and I actually had a really bad sleep and I was feeling so stiff and I really wanted to go for a massage. I have like this great reflexology place in town that just like heal your shoulders and neck in the best way. And then they do your feet and legs and hands. It's like the best. And
Ooh.
I really want to do that. But in my mind, I was kind of going back and forth between like, oh, I've got a bunch of stuff to do. I should go home and do that. And it was really the awareness of like, wait a minute, what do I need right now, like energetically? And what is compelling me to feel like I have to go home and do these things? And where is my energy going to be at? If I take an extra hour for myself, how much more productive am I going to be? So just pausing. And in the past, prior to me doing a lot of this work, I just didn't take the pause. It was these kind of internal battles. And I'd ultimately be like, well, the endless to do list will always win. That's what I have to go do because I have to. And that part was really driving me. And so it's taken a lot of practice to allow that other side of me to have a voice and to really sit with myself and say, what does my energy need right now? You said it at the beginning, becoming more of me and understanding who I am as a person and paying attention to like when I have those days where I sit down at my computer and I don't move for 9 hours, how do I actually feel? What is my output? Versus when I have a half day or I say, oh, I'm inspired this afternoon and I actually have 3 hours. I'm going to go create content. How much more magnetic am I in that content? So it's been such a practice for me and like an onion layering, learning to kind of integrate all of that and finding that balance. And it has not been very easy, but it's been amazing. And it's kind of cool to look back and see the progress and just how far I've come and how my mindset has really shifted around a lot of these beliefs that I really thought were mine.
One of the ways that we get to do that, first of all, is being really clear on who we do want to be and what that version of us does deserve to achieve. It's like programming a GPS. If we don't know where we're going, how can we make turns to get there, right? How do we know what road to take? How do we know? And so having a really clear, because your subconscious thinks in pictures and sounds and feelings, having a really clear vision of who that is, that version of you. And so if we are talking about a successful woman founder and you're magic wanding it, right? Where the sky is the limit, how much time does she spend at her desk? What does she believe about rest? I believe that rest breeds productivity and it breeds creativity. Now I am an amazing rester and I feel no guilt about resting ever because I know how much it serves me. I know that there's way more gain than loss in it. And sometimes we need someone else to help us reframe that. It's not always work we can do on our own because we're not in the practice of it. And that's the next thing. So we have this awareness, we take ownership of the identities that are coming in, of the roles that are coming in. And then we start practicing. Okay, if it's really clear, this evolved version of me, this deconditioned version of me, this true version of me, get finite details with her so that we can shorten that identity gap. Because if she only works in 4-hour blocks of time, let's just use this as an example. you're currently, and I don't mean you, I mean, let's just talk to everyone, right? Like the next level version of you, that deconditioned version of you, she works in 4-hour blocks of time, and you're currently working in 6 to 8 hour blocks of time. Well, okay, tomorrow your schedule may not allow you to do the 4 hours. However, you can start casting votes towards that. You can start shortening that identity gap. You can look at your schedule now and see, where can I start working less? Where can I start shaving some time off? What's happening? Here's what you're doing. You are now, right, creating new neural pathways. You're proving to future you, the current you knows what to do, and past you is like, look at us. We're flexing our subconscious identity muscles. We're making it safe. Because remember, fear is what's stopping us ultimately in 99% of the time. We're making it safe to be in the unfamiliar of working in 4-hour blocks as opposed to 6 or 8 hour blocks. And while that might seem really basic for you listening, this is where it matters. This is how you start casting the votes and shortening that identity gap. And the more you know about her, the more you script her out and see her and hear her and smell her, like all the things, the more you can shorten that gap and be her now, cast those votes towards her. Because it's not only how much time does she spend at her desk, it's, does she drink 8 ounce glasses of water? She does? Brilliant. You can do that, right? You can already be her right this second. She doesn't pick up her phone first thing in the morning. Okay, you can start that practice now to get into alignment with her,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah, I really love that. That's worked so well for me. I know when I started working with my coach a few years ago, we did a future Jess visualization and all of these things, painted the picture of what does my life look like? What is my day to day? How much am I working? Am I kids? Like just all of the
All of
things.
it.
And it was painted this very vivid vision of my life. And that's been so cool because it really grounded me in bigger picture, longer term. What am I building? What am I driving to? And then when I can root in like the day to day, it's really clear to me whether I'm in alignment with that or not. Like, would future Jess be doing this? Is this an alignment toward that vision? And so it's made it really easy for me to spot the places where maybe I was out of alignment.
Exactly, exactly. I do the same practice and we call it a 24 karat. This is your 24 karat era. And so if you're the woman who, and this is the 24 karat version, what is she doing today? What is she doing 30 days from now? What is she doing 60 days from now? And an example of this is a client who had a health goal. And so when she was crafting out her 24 karat outcome of this health goal, I ask her, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling internally, externally? What are you tasting? What are you smelling? And we're writing this all out again so she can cast those votes. She could hear the sound of the weights clinking as she picked them up. Like we are tapping in at the most
Okay.
granular details. So every time you hear
Yeah.
the weight, you're like, holy shit, I'm being her. I'm being her,
Yeah.
right? She could feel the sweat on her forehead. She could, right? All of these pieces. Every time we get clearer on that, we're shortening that identity gap. We're showing up more as her. And I do think it's vital because we can get into the guilt shame spiral when we realize we're out of alignment. Here is 3 of your new best friends, these phrases. When you notice that you're not showing up how you've said you wanted to show up, take the pause, like you talked about, and then choose one of these phrases. From now on, in the future, next time.
Yeah. I
We
love
can't go
that.
back. We can't go
Yeah.
back. We get to move forward. We get to ask a better question, make a different decision, choose a different path, experience something differently. So instead of getting stuck in the shame and guilt, because that will stop us and keep us in the familiar and the known, that's also a habit. Stress is a habit, guilt is a habit, all those things, right? They're familiar to us. We know them. So instead of that, and this will take practice, when you feel that guilt, that shame come up because you didn't show up like you wanted to, you didn't say what you wanted, whatever, you scrolled instead of, take a pause from now on, in the future, next time.
Yeah. I
What
love
gets to
those.
happen different? next time for
Yeah.
yourself. Feel the expansion in
Yeah.
that, the possibility.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and our language, that's been something that I've learned for
so
sure. Our
huge.
language is so important. I was talking about something the other week and gave me like a reframe on language as well, that it's so easy to default back to old habits. I'm kind of in the business transition right now, and it was just around my future Jess and a bunch of stuff I want to do. And I think she said, "We're not trying, it's you are, you will." And just
Yes.
the language we use is so powerful and it can be so subconscious, but we're in some ways kind of keeping ourselves locked in that old
Yes,
vision of us just through how we're speaking, the words we're choosing.
exactly,
And yeah, that
exactly.
part's just been so powerful for me to learn and just bring awareness to.
The try to pick up a pen. You either pick it up or you don't, right? It's
Yeah,
not, you don't try. It's the same with your glasses, right? They're on or they're off. You're not trying, right? Now, what I do love to say is trying on. I'm trying on this version, like a dress, like a new
I
pair
like
of
that.
shoes. I'm trying on this routine, right? We're still practicing, we're still learning in it. These identities that we're talking about, the ones that we're cycling through all the time, the ones that serve us, the other piece, because earlier when you said, it'll move from my business to my relationship, like this thing.
Yeah,
We are also cycling through those types of identities. So your CEO, Jess, and CEO, Jess isn't serving your kids when it's time to read a bedtime story, right? Mom Jess is the one who's serving the kids when it's time to read a bedtime story. And so remembering that it's really healthy to be cycling through our identities. And it's when we get caught in one, when we get stuck in one, that we start to feel constricted. And that's exactly what you were saying about the words that you're choosing. So if you're habitually in an identity of people pleasing or proving or hustling, right? You're going to notice that version of you uses certain words, has beliefs that keep her operating from there. And it's the conditioning and the automation that happens in the subconscious. That's the villain. It's not you, right?
yeah,
It's the conditioning. And so you get to have the dream business, the freedom in the schedule, the insert version of success here. You get to stop the overthinking, the indecision, whatever pieces are coming up for you when you shed that conditioning, when you allow yourself to release those habitual ways of being in order to be someone more expanded.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. So for some people who are kind of newer to this work, I'd love to hear a little bit about the tools and modalities that you use with clients because I think a lot of people will be listening to this and resonating with a lot of what we're saying or sort of seeing themselves in some of these beliefs and being like, okay, this is great, but what does this actually look like? This particularly with that example you gave of the client being like, wait, in 15 minutes, you were able to like unwind and rewire this limiting belief that she had. Like, what does that look like? What are some of the methods you actually use with clients to do this work?
Yes, absolutely. So, like I said before, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, so I use hypnotherapy for sure. And hypnotherapy, well, I could hypnotize you in 15 minutes. We don't need a whole bunch of time. Usually I take a little bit longer than that for hypnosis because I like to really bring people down to relax, that kind of a thing. I also use what I call laser coaching. So, I have a gift and I can hear a limiting belief in just a story that you're telling me and something that you're saying. And so because of that, clients come onto a session and they say whatever it is and I pretty much immediately can laser in on you're believing that you're going to have to give up XYZ in order to do this. And so then I just pull it apart with the questions, the reframe. Okay, well, when did you decide that? What makes you believe that? Then they say it. And it's like for laser coaching, when we're talking about a limiting belief, and for those of you that don't know, limiting belief is any belief that limits you from being whatever the hell you want to be, right? Or doing whatever you want to do. It's a limit. Literally, I'm seeing like a barricade, it's a limit. Those, when we bring it out into the light, all of a sudden, it's that? Like that thing
Yeah.
was stopping me? That thing that said, I couldn't Be authentic to me. That's one of the tools that I use. I'm trained in NLP. So NLP, it's you can get lots of definitions of it. It's the study of excellence, it's languaging, it's patterning. And so we really rewire in that way as well. I will do timeline techniques where I'll go back on your timeline. I'll take you back on your timeline and release a limiting decision, release a limiting belief, and then come back across your timeline with a new, more empowered belief that just allows expansion instead of constriction in it, instead of a roadblock. So sometimes it's just really good questions that I know how to ask because I've been doing it so long. It's also vital that the client does the work, as
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, there's a huge
This
part of
is
that.
yeah, I don't actually typically tell my clients what to do because you already know what to do. You have all the answers inside you already. I help you bring them out because we want to take aligned action. Here's how we get into these conditionings is we see someone else's 20K month goal, 30K month goal, $100,000 launch, and we think, oh, that's success. So I have to do that. So now we're following somebody else's blueprint for their version of success. Well, of course we feel unaligned. Where are we in that? Of course, we don't feel like we can lead from self trust in that because we've just taken everything that someone else said and just tried to put ourselves there as opposed to, okay, well, this has some great frameworks in it and I like this and I don't really like this. So, how do I get to be me in this? And do I really want 20K months? What would having that do for me? Right? Here's
Yeah.
a great place to ask why. When we've set a goal, why do I want 20K months? Well, because XYZ. Okay, well, what would having that do for me? I love to go 7 Ys deep when, again, when we're talking about our hopes, our dreams, our schemes, because then we get to the real root of why we're setting this goal. And lots of times we'll get to the place of, it was just because everybody else, like, that's what you're supposed to do, right? I
Yeah, and you're kind
should
of like,
be.
"I actually don't know. I don't want this," and it makes so
Exactly.
much sense. I actually love that exercise so much, the 7 layers of why, and I've also done it in the context of fear as well. I had lots of money things to work through when I first started this business, and that exercise helped me so much just around going there, being like, "Okay, what is the worst that can happen? And then what could happen? And then what?" And you get to like, "Well, I don't know. What if I'm bankrupt?" Or you just get to the worst case scenario that your mind can go to, and then you actually realize, like, I'm really resourceful and I'm powerful, and if that thing actually did happen, this is what I would do, and it's okay. And, yeah, you don't want that to happen, but you also have walked yourself through it, and now that fear kind of becomes obsolete because 'cause you're like, "You know what? I know what I would do if I got there." So the power isn't quite the same as, the hold it used to have on me.
Exactly, exactly. Which brings me to another modality that I use, and it's called rapid rewire. And that is to release emotional charge around something. So there may be some great emotional charge around money, around a conversation that you had, around getting on video, like whatever that is releasing the emotional charge. And by doing that, what we do is we go into it, like you just said, into the charge in order to dissipate it so that you can get back to a place of I get to make choices here, right? The emotion doesn't control me. I control the emotion. And that rapid rewire also integrate conflicting identities and allow those pieces again to come in so that we have choice, right? We're a conscious being of choice. I can have a little of this. I can have a little CEO Jess and I can have a little of this and a little bit of hustler Jess, right? So that I can be the version of me that's gonna serve me the best right now.
Yeah. I really love that. And I think a lot of people might have the question around like within this work, they're probably listening, being like, yep, that's a blocker, or starting to kind of see where they're holding themselves back. A lot of our listeners are marketers wanting to step into the fractional CMO world or they're fractional CMOs. And a lot of the things I hear are, I couldn't charge that much, or I don't know, how would I find clients? They're not out there, or really overwhelmed. I just recorded a podcast on what I see as far as how people do this role that burns them out. There's just lots of common themes that I hear when it comes to limiting beliefs in this space. And I'm curious, I know my journey and my story, but I'm curious what you see with clients. How fast do you see transformation or change when people start stepping into this work? Is it something that if they're deciding to do this, this is going to take them years, or do you see results and change in people relatively quickly?
Relatively quickly. As a matter of fact, one session.
I
When
love that.
you make the choice that you deserve something different, something better, I hold the space for your belief in your limitlessness while your belief catches up. And so we make these micro shifts. I will do a session with a client I'm particularly thinking of. She tends to overthink like us all, right? She can sit in indecision about something. And so she's like, oh, I could just never make a quick decision. I will take her to a moment in time where she has made a quick decision, even if it was about, am I going to have chocolate or vanilla? I don't care. And your brain doesn't care either. What we're going for is the moment that you made the quick decision. You were the woman who made a quick decision. So you can be the woman who makes a quick decision again. You were presented with the evidence. You looked at it. You gave it consideration, not overthinking, right? You gave it consideration. You made the decision. You moved on. You didn't make the decision mean anything about you, except that you made a decision. And so we will tap into those places because I truly believe how you do one thing gets to be how you do everything. Not how you do one thing is how you do everything, because that feels really limiting to me. If you're showing up in ways that you don't want to show up, that's super defeating to hear, oh, well, how you do one thing is how you do everything. That's not true in my experience. So I like to help people see that they truly are super powerful. And then they make these tiny shifts and they get this massive change, like right away, because all of a sudden that identity gap has shortened. Now,
Yeah.
do they all happen like the client who hit the $1 million in revenue? Well, she's also a brilliant businesswoman. So she had strategies in place. She had systems in place in order to do that. Once she made the decision to be that woman, the time was short because she already knew what to do it. And the same thing happens for all of us. Once we make the decision to be that new person, your RAS brings you what you anticipate and expect. And your brain is deleting, distorting, and generalizing based on this new level of belief in yourself, this new way of being. And so you'll see more of what you couldn't see before.
I really love that. I feel like I could talk to you all day long about this, but we are getting to time.
Yeah,
Couple small questions before I let you go here.
sure.
If someone's interested in this work, what is one small thing they can do today if they're listening to this episode that is action taking kind of towards shifting some of their limiting beliefs or subconscious patterns?
Yes. So I'm going to say two small things they can do. First of all, awareness. Be aware of the words that you're using when you talk about yourself. So I am is identity. These are identity based words. What are you saying about yourself that is not empowered? Notice that. No shame. Just be a
Yeah.
detective. Notice,
Yeah.
get curious, right? The other thing is take my identity quiz and see who's showing up. I have this 5-question quiz and you just answer and it's like, oh, here's the pattern. Boom, that you maybe didn't recognize before. The words that you're using are very telling. And so you don't hear them, but other people do. And so
Yeah.
really asking yourself, notice, what are you saying when you look in the mirror? What are you saying to yourself when you make a mistake? What are you saying to yourself when you feel extra levels of stress? Start asking those questions. Who am I saying that I am? And is that
Yeah.
empowered?
Yeah. Okay. I really love that. And I will put the quiz link in the show notes.
Awesome.
If anyone is interested in connecting with you, asking questions, learning about what you do, where can they
Yeah.
find you?
Take the quiz and they can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I'm the only Mindi Huebner. So slide into my DMs. I have a 15-minute call to really see what identity is driving your leadership. Who are you
Yeah.
being subconsciously on the regular that you maybe don't even realize? So we can make a shift in that. Because again, awareness is the first step to making the changes, is even knowing how you're showing up, who you're being.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mindy. It's been amazing having you. I could
Thank
just talk
you.
with you all day about this. It's been so great. And like I said at the start, this work has just like profoundly changed my life and who I am as a person, who I am as a business owner, as a mom, as a wife, as a friend. Like I am not who I was when I started this business. And I'm like just so grateful to have found this work. So, if you're building a fractional CMO business and you don't want to waste years figuring it out the hard way, Fractional CMO School is open for enrollment and we'll give you the step-by-step roadmap that I used to build my business to 6 figures in 6 months and then $1 million per year with a small team of 2. There's expert coaching, one-on-one support, and whether you are an aspiring fractional CMO or you're growing, you're trying to figure out how to scale your team or do the role in a way that doesn't lead to burnout, it is a great fit for you. And you can learn more at thecmooffice.com. If you love this episode today, here is what I would love from you. Take 30 seconds to rate and review the show. It helps more marketers and CMOs find this content. Hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're going to implement any of this or you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out in my DMs on Instagram. I would love to support you. And thank you for listening. I will see you next week.